Daryl Morey is the new president of basketball operations in the city of Philadelphia. Now, there are some people in that city that believes he is there, and the mission is to get James Harden to Philadelphia. Now, I'm not going to ask you about James Harden, but what I will ask you is this. Are you of the mindset that there are certain guys that are untouchable, or are you of the mindset that no one is untouchable in professional basketball in particular?
That's a good question. That's my first official head coach type question. I appreciate it, and I wouldn't expect it from anybody but you, Stephen A. I appreciate that question. But as far as James, he's our guy. You know, he's our guy. And in the interview process, I talked to both James and Russ and let them know that the reason that I want this job is because of them. So I expect those guys to be here. I haven't heard anything else to the contrary. So that's how I feel about it, and that's how it's going to be. Well, first with Russ, I want him to play his game. I want him to go. I want to see all that energy. I want to see all that fire, and we'll work around all the other stuff. You know, I mean, he's really the only one in the NBA that you see that fire from on a night-to-night basis, whether it's Game 1, Game 40, or 7th game of the playoffs. So that's what I want to see from him. As far as the past and why they haven't made the big jumps in the playoffs, I'm not really sure. I didn't really get into that as much. I'm really concentrating more on the future and what we can do with this group going forward and the big jump that we can make to win a title, not just with those two, but with Eric Gordon and Covington and Tucker and guys like that. It's a group effort. So to kind of single out those two guys as a reason why or why not doesn't really resonate with me. It's a group effort, and that's what we're trying to do here. Training camp was going to start December 1st, and we were going to start the season December 22nd. So as far as the preparation is concerned, it really hasn't been that much of a surprise, but it is a short window, and I have a lot that I want to do, but mainly for me, it's the players and making sure that the players are going to be healthy and that we ramp it up in a smart way to where there won't be any injuries or lagging or lingering injuries going forward.
So I wonder, what changes? Are you continuing with that lineup as the kind of basis of the offense, or are you making changes to that concept?
Well, it's really based on how Rafael and I, and mostly Rafael, puts the roster together. You know, the small ball is very much a product of the roster that they had. Obviously, I want to have multiple ways of playing. I think to have playoff success, you have to have multiple ways of playing on both ends of the floor. So having a traditional center would be good for me, so I would be able to play small like they've done in the past and like I did 15 years ago when I worked for Don Nelson, and then play big with a rolling center and someone playing in the dunker, and the matchups would be a little bit better for our group, and then the defense and the rebounding would be a little bit better as well. So my goal is to have multiple ways of playing on both ends of the floor, and Rafael's looking to put together a roster so I can do so.
But in the end, you look at Russell, you look at James Harden, you look at a team that's built to be successful in the regular season, not necessarily the postseason. Specifically, if you can speak to it, how would you modify things compared to what we've seen from the Houston Rockets over the last 4 or 5 years? What would you do to have them better prepared for a postseason run?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you use the regular season to prepare for the playoffs, right? So if you have multiple ways of playing, if you have the ability to play bigger or play smaller, now when you get to the playoffs, you have multiple tools in your toolbox to go to. There won't be quite as many isolations as we've seen in the past. Those guys have had to work so hard to get to their greatness and get to what makes them really successful. But in the playoffs, you see it stalls because there aren't really a third, fourth option to go to. So from my point of view, optionality is going to be everything, and getting a little bit more ball movement, getting a little bit more player movement, letting those guys play on the move a little bit more so they won't see quite as many double teams. And then as the playoffs come, we can go to that stuff to where it won't be quite as predictable, especially in a 5-7 game series where you're trying to deal with someone who's preparing and sees you game after game after game. You have to have something else to go to, and that's what I'm planning to do. I would give them more ownership and optionality to be able to do different things on the floor. But for me to come in here and expect for the team that's the sixth best offensive team in the NBA to change and go away from the things that were successful doesn't make any sense to me. So those guys are going to be doing very much. They're going to be playing very much in a similar way, but with some tweaks and some adjustments to make it a little bit easier for them.